Yes, everybody, welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com, or of course, if you are watching on our fast-growing YouTube channel, on the road to 10K right now, AJ, as you know very well. I've been blasting that. You've been blasting that. You've even hopped on the train now as well on the 10,000
Absolutely.
10,000 subscriber train.
I did that podcast with Brett, which we should promote. Any Carolina Duke fans, I think will enjoy. I've got a lot of really positive feedback.
Great podcast.
I told Brett I got to channel my inner Jacob Turner.
Yes.
So
I love that. I appreciate the shout out. Man. We're getting there. We're going to get there. Our goal is to get there before the season ends. So like I said, keep subscribing to that. But if you're watching on our fast-growing YouTube channel, that is Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner. And joining me, as he always does, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And AJ, we're here to talk Carolina Duke, part 2 of the 2022 season. A ton of storylines, even more storylines than the last game in Chapel Hill.
Yeah.
In this one, it will obviously be Coach K's final home game as the coach at Duke, and obviously his final Carolina Duke game in the regular season. Let's just put it that way. So a lot of storylines to cover in this one. Carolina looking to bounce back after a really kind of lackluster performance in Chapel Hill, for lack of a better word. And obviously Duke trying to finish the way they feel they should in Coach K's last ever game in Durham. Before we dive into this one, though, AJ, make sure you guys go check out our podcast sponsor on this one, The Rogue Shop. Check them out at therogueshop.com. Specialize in top shelf, family-grown hit products. You guys know what it is. CBD, Delta 8, Delta 9, whatever form you want it in, they've got it. Make sure you guys check them out at therogueshop.com. I've used their products. AJ's got their hand on products. Kevin's used their products. And we're all got nothing but really, really positive things to say about it.
We got to get Dina a sample. We got to get Dina a sample box.
We do. We got to get Dina on board.
She tore her ACL playing basketball in college, and she has knee trouble. She says, rub some cream on Dina. You'll be all right.
That cream works. That cream really does work. So we'll have to get Dina on the train as well. She definitely needs some. And guys, if you want to save on that, use the promo code TARHEELS10 to save again at therogueshop.com. Really, really high quality products. I'm not just saying that either. I'm not just, I really, really have used their products and really think they're fantastic. So check them out. Link is in the description below. But AJ, let's dive into this with 6 p.m. tip-off on ESPN on Saturday night in Durham, in Cameron Indoor. Carolina coming to this game 22-8, 14-5 in the ACC, tied right now in second place with Notre Dame, who obviously has the game in hand on Carolina because they did beat them earlier this season. Duke sitting at 26-4, 16-3 in conference play. Duke just closed out the outright regular season championship in the ACC after Notre Dame's loss to Florida State, and following they secured at least a bit part of that when they beat Pittsburgh. But yeah, outright regular season champs for the Blue Devils in Coach K's final season. So I think we have to start with Coach K. I know you and Brett hit on it a lot in that podcast you guys did earlier, which we put out earlier on Thursday. Fantastic podcast. After this one's done, go click on our YouTube channel and you'll be able to find that one pretty easily. Brett and AJ have covered a ton of Duke Carolina games and a ton of college sports and professional sports over their years. So it's just a fantastic podcast to listen to. But AJ, I want to talk about Coach K, obviously, because we have to. We can't do this podcast without talking to him. But you and Brett hit on this a little bit, and this is what I want to ask you. You hit on kind of the atmosphere, and I'm not going to give away what you said for people who haven't listened to it. Do you think the atmosphere going into that game, the pageantry of the game, probably the insane amount of celebrities, for instance, are going to be in the stands for this one, just for what this spectacle is, does that play into Carolina's hands? Because like you guys kind of talked about, this is a game where Carolina can come in feeling loose. This is a game where Duke's going to have all that pressure to win because of how big the moment is. Do you think this game in that respect kind of plays into Carolina's hands going into Durham on Saturday?
It can. The conventional wisdom is, shouldn't say the conventional wisdom, the prevailing narrative is that Carolina has no chance. Duke's going to be sky high. They're going to win it for Coach K, all that kind of stuff. But that doesn't happen a lot. The emotion that's not, it's something that doesn't evolve on the court or field of play. When that kind of emotion goes into something, it can either work really, really well for a team or work really, really poorly for a team. And there are enough examples of both to say that I have no idea. I think it works to Carolina's advantage if it doesn't work to Duke's. Mm-hmm. If Duke is tight and Duke doesn't have the right focus because the questions are about K and they're not really about North Carolina. And the players are going to see all these former players come in the greats, the Leitners, the Battiers, Trajan Langdon, going all the way back even to pre-Duke with Jaminski and Banks. And Banks played his senior year for Coach K. That was K's first year. So they're going to have all those guys coming through, and the players are going to be dealing with that, and they're not really going to be as zeroed in on the game. At least that's what one might think. Or they could be just so sky high to get this one for Coach K.
Yeah.
And you know how the Tar Heels can be at times, especially on the road. We've seen that before, that it turns out to be another mismatch. I have absolutely no idea. I do think Carolina will go into it with the right frame of mind. I think if Carolina can withstand the initial blow in the game, I think they could be okay. I actually think the Tar Heels are going to play well. I think they're going to shoot well and play well. They have to shoot great to win this game. And if they let Duke know, hey, that club that you beat a month ago, we're different now. Hubert has said twice this week, the chemistry is much better. I wrote a piece a couple of days ago asking the question, is Carolina playing its best basketball of the year? I think they are right now, but I think they can get better. I think they're ascending because the questions of earlier in the year were standing punches in the middle of the game. They've been doing that pretty well lately. Being gritty, being dragged into a back alley and having to win a game like that, having to make plays at crunch time. They're doing those things now. They didn't either have to do them before or they didn't consistently do it before, but we're seeing more of that. The Pitt game, I think, was a bottoming out for this team. I think that was the realization that crap on the front of your jersey means nothing unless you play to that standard, unless you respect those words on the front. And I think they learned that with Pitt. So all of that being said, I think the Tar Heels are well positioned to play well. And if they play well and Duke is all over the place and maybe just doesn't have their A game, then the Tar Heels have a chance to win.
Yeah, it's just such a big moment when you think about Coach K and his longevity and just how outstanding of a career, Hall of Fame career that he's had is, arguably the greatest college basketball coach of all time, if not, just basketball coach period in terms of what he's been able to accomplish in his career. So that is something.
Well, let me say this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, let me add this as well. I've covered about 350 of Coach K's games. I did about, I think I don't know the exact number, so I'm throwing the ballpark number out there. At least 250 in Cameron. Because for a long time, when I was at Star News and Fox and Buster, I was covering all the schools, right? And both Carolina and Duke I would do 28, 30 games a year from both teams, or 28, I guess. And one of the things that was consistent with Coach K is that when he sensed his team didn't have the right mojo, when he sensed they didn't have the right bite, he would bite them. He'd call timeout and he'd tear into them. And, you've seen Duke how many times at home they're just kind of wallowing around and they got Clemson in the building or somebody like that. And it's the under 4 timeout and it's 32-32. Yeah. And at halftime, it's 48-33 because they turn it up. He's like, he knows how to get into them and lift something out that some coaches can't extract from their teams. He's a master at that. I think that of all the things that I saw him do up close for all the years that I covered him, that was probably the one thing that I marveled at the most. He could take a guy who's sleepwalking and get him into a full sprint and run through the ribbon before anybody else, better than any coach I've ever seen. And that's one of the reasons why he's so great. So if the Devils' minds are all over the place and the Tar Heels are locked in and they're hitting shots and they're going backdoor and all that kind of stuff, he's capable of resetting that team. Mm-hmm. We've seen Duke come from behind against Carolina quite a bit in that building. We saw it in 18, I think it was. They came back and made a push in that game, or was it 19? Remember the one that David Robinson's kid was big in the second half?
Yeah.
Storylines like that pop up. I've seen it a lot. My first Duke Carolina game at Cameron was 1998. Carolina had a 17-point lead in the second half. Duke came back and won the game. That was the Wojo hugging K game. So, I think for Carolina, as far as Carolina goes, Jacob, I think that they're going to go into this prepared to play very, very well and win the game. Whether they will or not, I have no idea because there's so many boxes they have to check. But I think this team has a game in them in which they will check all those boxes against a really good team.
Yeah, no, definitely agree. Let's hit on kind of what Carolina has to do to win in this one. And I think I don't know if I'm kind of stating the obvious here for people who do follow this team pretty hard and who've watched this team consistently all year. Because for me, going into this game, it starts with Caleb Love because this team goes as Caleb Love goes. It's just extremely evident. If Caleb Love plays well, usually this Carolina team plays well and wins games. Now, he had just 8 points on 3 of 10 shooting in the first meeting against Duke earlier this season after averaging 21.5 points per game against him in the regular season last year. So Caleb's got to play well. I mean, there's no way that this team can go into this environment against a really good Duke team and have a Caleb Love performance like they had in Chapel Hill, because like I said, this team is so reliant at times, especially against bigger teams, on what Caleb Love can do. They really, truly do go as Caleb Love goes. So that for me is kind of the X factor. He's the X factor. He's the guy that I'm going to be watching to see, all right, does he come out hitting a couple shots early, or does he miss a couple? What's his body language like early? What's his focus look like in this game? Obviously, we've seen him turn it on late in a lot of games this season and come up big for Carolina. But I don't think Carolina can get away with that. I think Caleb Love has to play good for 40 minutes or most of those 40 minutes on Saturday for Carolina to have a chance to win. So, AJ, kind of building off that, and for you, what does Carolina have to do to have a chance to win and be able to pull out a victory in Durham on Saturday?
Well, I'll hit on Caleb since you just talked about him. Caleb has shown in the last 5 weeks a unique ability to be a dog at times, to just grind it. Right? We call it screw you player. He's got that in him.
He's got that, yeah.
And he's done it late in some important games, even games in which he didn't play well, like Monday night, or at least didn't shoot well. I don't think he played poorly Monday. He just didn't shoot well.
Yeah, he couldn't shoot the ball.
Got a couple bad shots, but he didn't play great against Louisville, but he came up big. Against Clemson, he wasn't great in that game, but he made the drive and the dish to Brady for the game-winning basket. He's making winning plays, and he's doing them at the right time, at the absolute. He's a bottom of the ninth guy. You get a runner on scoring position, and Caleb Love comes up the bat.
He's the
That's
guy
the guy you want up the bat. He's going to drive the ball to a gap and score the run, right? That's the kind of guy he's becoming. Lots of other parts of his game are not all in sync just yet. That will happen with time. As I've said 100 times here in the last month or so, he's in the midst of his process, and things are, they're all going to meet at a central point at some point in his game. I don't know if it'll be this year. It might not be till next year or the year after, but he's heading in that direction. The good thing for Carolina fans is he shows the positive flashes pretty much every game now. But in this game, he can't wait till there's 6 minutes left to be a dog. Mm-hmm. He's got to be a dog from the opening tip. He was last year in that game there, but I would look way past that. I wouldn't even include that.
Yeah, it's such a different factor with no fans. And that was a bad Duke team too.
the trite night and day example, but it's literally what it was. There were nobody in the building last year. Duke did not allow fans. They didn't let media in there. I covered that game from the spot where I'm sitting right now because we weren't allowed in the building.
I forgot.
So nobody was in there. Nobody was in there. And so that doesn't even count. I mean, it counts, but it doesn't count because the game was intense. Armando told us Thursday that, look, they approached that game. It's Carolina Duke. They were super intense, but you didn't have the other elements. And those elements can be a factor at times. So I think Caleb is showing that he could play up to the crowd. He could play well on the road. He's been really solid on the road at times. And he's okay kind of playing up the crowd. I think he gets fueled by the crowd. The concern in this game would be he's never been in something like this. The one in Chapel Hill wasn't what this is going to be like, because I've always thought the one in Duke was always a little bit more intense because the students are right on top of you. It feels like the court's smaller. It seems like the court's smaller just because the way that building is. And Duke defends a little differently at home than on the road. I've always thought that they overplay a little bit more at home, which I think plays into Brady Manek's hands. I think we could see some backdoor stuff with him. I think we could see some leaky and puff backdoor stuff as well if Duke extends like it usually does at home. So, but I do think that Caleb is the key player. They're undefeated when he scores 20 or more points. They're undefeated when he has 5 or more assists. It's kind of all you need to know and go from there. But I could see him elevating his game, and maybe RJ. Duke has 2 areas statistically where it's not great. The Devils don't have a great turnover margin number. I think they're ranked 301 in the nation, and they're like in the 250s or something in 3-point percentage defense. Mm-hmm. So Carolina can shoot the 3. That's a strength. But turnover, Carolina's given up a lot of turnovers that lead to points this year. That's something they're going to have to avoid. So in the next part here, I do want to hit on offensive rebounding and turnovers leading to points and steals and stuff like that, because I think that's a part of Carolina's game that's an issue every time they play. But in this game specifically, you're right. Begins with Caleb. Someone else has to hit threes. They get 2 guys going on for 3. They got to have that, and they got to have that early. And Armando must avoid foul trouble. I think when he went out, he said today that they weren't ready to play that magnitude of game the first time. I think when he went out with the foul trouble, their their armor guy, their coat of armor guy, their hard hat lunch pail guy went to the bench, and they looked around and said, okay, who's going to be the balls out dude? Who's going to be the enforcer, the bouncer, right? Like they didn't have anybody out there, and Duke had 5 on the floor essentially at that point, the way Adrian Griffin was playing. So Armando has to be the bouncer. He has to be on the floor. So if he's on the floor and they get that from him, that means Brady can be the guy that he could be. That means Leaky could be the guy he could be. RJ and Caleb could be the guys they could be. They have to be who they are. And when Armando's out of the game, especially against a team like this, nobody can really be who they are.
Yeah, definitely. You said you want to hit on a couple of things too. I want to ask you this real quick before we do that. Is the way, and the reason I'm asking this is from listening to Armando Bacot and Hubert Davis's press conference earlier on Thursday, which you can check out on our YouTube channel as well. And they both hit on this, and it made me kind of think about it. They especially Armando said that, I think he said the Duke Carolina, how they played earlier this year and in the game at Chapel Hill is something he thinks about almost every day. It's something that he constantly thinks about. Hubert kind of said that as well, that it was something that they have thought about, talked about, discussed, prepared for. Do you think, and this is another kind of situation that can go both ways, but do you think that the way Carolina played in that first game, the way that game ended up finishing, the way that Carolina's played against good teams this year, and the way that they're playing now, being able to grind out results, playing with a little bit more confidence, playing a little more consistently, do you think the way that Carolina played in that game in Chapel Hill is a positive for this team going in to Durham?
No. And by the way, they're playing a little bit more chip right now too, which I think is good.
Yeah, they got a little more moxie to them. Yeah.
When Hubert says that they have more chemistry, I think that they're all playing for a common purpose more now. And I'm not suggesting that they weren't before, but yeah, I think one of the smartest things Hubert said all year, he said earlier today, and we're taping this Thursday evening, when he said, relationships grow over time. Because good relationships get stronger over time. And these kids like each other. They get along. They're playing for each other at the end of February more than early in the year because their relationships have gotten stronger. That's the chemistry. And I think it's more of a collective chip. It's not one or two guys saying, man, I got to carry us, so I'm going to have a chip. They all kind of have a common chip. They share it. And I think that that's a sign of growth as well. As far as the first game goes, I don't know. I never looked at getting your butt kicked by somebody in your own building and saying, hey, that's going to be a positive for us in a month from now. Mm-hmm. Because if Duke gets out to a 12-2 start, that's what will be in their mind.
Yeah, it's like, here we go.
I think that could, we've talked a lot, Jacob, about how in sports, human nature is ever present on the fields and courts of play, whether it's team sports or individual sports. And human nature all comes from the mind. And the mind is a tricky thing. And even the most mentally tough people on the planet can battle, psyche and confidence. And I would think that this team, they're like, yeah, we pretty good. We've been playing pretty well, but they still haven't really beaten anybody than the Hokies on the road. And that's just the Hokies on the road. Like, they still have a lot to prove to themselves. And if they're down 12-2 or it's 26-8, like it was in the Dean Dome, that will be tough for these kids to come back from. But it'd be tough for anybody to come back from. But I think that maybe 12-2 becomes 26-8 if you're thinking too much about what happened before. Yes, on the flip side of that, I think this is what's interesting about this team. They've explained all of their losses in one way or another. And I kind of buy it. I'm not buying the fact that they should have lost those games or should have approached them that way. When they went to Notre Dame and lost, Caleb's like, well, we didn't take them seriously because they lost to Boston College. Of course, the immediate thought was, but they just beat Kentucky, who wiped the floor with you 12 days ago.
Yeah.
But that's part of their process of respecting. And I think, Leak even said, look, we think we put on the jersey that we're just going to be better than we really are. And I think they've learned some hard lessons about that. When they went to Miami, they weren't ready to play. When they went to Wake Forest, they got punched, they didn't get up. And then Duke did it again to them a week later. And they've learned some of these things. But I think they were surprised that they didn't react to Duke. I think that they didn't expect Wake to do that. So they knew Duke was, and he still didn't respond. And I think that there's a different kind of embarrassment that they experienced with that, because it's Duke. How can you not get back up against Duke?
Yeah,
this is like the end all be all, greatest rivalry in sports, all the different things that people tag on this game. It's understandable if you just lay an egg in Winston-Salem or you lay an egg in Coral Gables. You can't lay an egg in this game. It is totally unjustified, right? inexcusable, right? All those words were thrown out there. And I think that they recognize that. So I think they could get positive mental fuel going into it, but you don't want to harp on it too much. I think Armando doesn't want to get in foul trouble early. He threw that out a couple of times today. I think the shot selection by Caleb in that game, and the fact that Brady, who, by the way, has had big games at Fog Island Fieldhouse before, was the only guy that looked like he played his game that night. So I do think it could go either way. We're going to know early on. I've learned a long time ago that every time I thought, man, I know how this game's going to go, 8 minutes into it, I'm as dead wrong as can be. Yeah. So that's the beautiful thing. Like, nobody expected David Robinson's kid to be the savior a couple of years ago. That's what's beautiful about these games, is because there's always a storyline that pops up that nobody had on their radar.
Yeah.
And this Carolina team, if that storyline is on the Duke side, this Carolina team has to be able to handle that. I do think that the mental toughness is a little bit more there, and they might have a better ability to do that now. But you never know. We're just talking, man. We're just talking.
You just don't know until the game starts.
This is it. It's a different animal. Like Brett and I talked about in that podcast. It's like its own season.
Yeah.
And a season has a ton of storylines. These games have ebbs and flows and storylines too. My personal belief is I think the Heels are going to go in there ready to play well and expecting to play well.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's something Hubert harped on a lot in his press conference on Thursday as well. Is just another game. Got to be prepared. We've talked about it. It's important for us just to treat it like another game and not a spectacle like it is. So going to be interesting. Carolina's got to start strong. I think that's another important thing they've got to do. I mean, we've seen it countless times this year against those good teams and some of these blowouts where Carolina's just never looks like they're in it. Even you could say it in some respect in terms of how the Duke game started out and how far Carolina was behind. So I think that's such an incredibly important thing. And I think it'll be another game where you'll be able to tell early if this Carolina team has it or doesn't have it. And hopefully that's not a question like it was in Chapel Hill. I know Carolina fans will be thinking that. The box score.
Also, the box score. A couple things to look for in a box score. And without even seeing the score of the game, this will give you an indication of how well Carolina plays. This is not a great offensive rebounding team. Last year's team rebounded almost 45% of their misses. This year's club's around 31%. And they don't score as many points off of offensive rebounds as they did a year ago either. So their scoring per offensive rebound is down from what it was. They also are like dead last or near dead last in the nation at steals. They don't force a lot of turnovers. They're near the bottom of the nation in forcing turnovers. So the teams of the past used to create extra scoring opportunities for themselves by getting their offensive rebound. Every time you get an offensive rebound, it's an extra possession. Every time you get a steal that's in play, you force turnover that's in play, and you're able to get to the rim quickly, that's not only an extra possession, that's an extra possession with a high percentage shot. Roy's teams always pride themselves on that. This year's team doesn't do those things. And because of that, there are games where they're shooting like 48% from the floor. And their overall rebounding numbers are, +8 against the other team because they're really good at keeping teams off the offensive glass, by the way. But they're only ahead by like 5 against a mediocre team. Yeah. That's an area that could hurt them Saturday night, because if they're forced to have to shoot 50% from the field and make shots from all over, like they shot 31% inside the arc against Syracuse. They got to be better than that against Duke. If they have to be extremely efficient for 40 minutes to be able to win a game against Duke because they're getting nothing off the offensive glass or very little, and they're getting next to nothing on forcing turnovers and leading to easy points, that makes the game more challenging. If the Tar Heels are getting putbacks early, and if they get a few turnovers and get in the open court and have some transition stuff early, that's a real good sign that the whole of their game is inside the building that night.
It's going to be very interesting to watch that glass. Carolina, top of the ACC in rebound, and Duke right behind them. Carolina at 39.7 a game, and Duke at 38.6. So you got two really good rebounding teams going into this game. So, yeah, that battle on the glass is going to be incredibly important. And that's why you've got to have a guy like Armando Bacot not in foul trouble. Like you said, being a presence down there and having a positive game, because when you think about it, he's the guy that's usually grabbing all the boards for the Tar Heels. So really important that he has a good game as well. So, we could do predictions. I mean, I know you've already offered yours. In some ways,
I haven't yet.
He's going to win yet, but
I haven't. I know that you sent your staff picks. I haven't actually done mine yet. Not because I'm holding out, because I've just been swamped.
I know,
because we also had football stuff on Thursday. I've been completely swamped. So, I think I'll tell you what. I don't know. I'm probably going to pick Duke to win this game, but I think Carolina's got a pretty good shot to go in there and win. And if the Tar Heels do win, then we're not going to write any more NET reports. Because they're a lock. They'll be in the field.
Yeah,
I know Brett thinks they're in the field anyway. I don't think they're in the, I get they lose this game, they get blown out. They got to do something in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. If they win this game, doesn't matter what happens in Brooklyn, they're in the field. All they could do in Brooklyn is enhance their seed. And perhaps that could happen. But I think Carolina's got a pretty good chance to win this game, Jacob. I think Caleb's going to play well. Mm-hmm. I think there has to be an X factor there. There has to Brady, even when Brady, Armando, and Caleb all play well, that's what they expect, right? RJ too, but RJ is inconsistent as well. We don't talk about his inconsistencies as much, maybe because I think people's expectations for Caleb are higher, so they get a little bit more upset or frustrated when he doesn't meet their expectations because they don't have the same expectations for RJ, right? Mm-hmm. I'll tell you right now, Leaky scoring some points, getting a few threes, and Puff Johnson giving them something off the bench, and maybe Kerwin comes off the bench and gets some looks. He didn't play the other night, but he played Duke twice last year. He started both those games. I know it wasn't the same thing, right? But still, he's played them. And I think he scored 18 in the Dean Dome against them. So he's had success against them. So if they can get some production in the first half, and Hubert's able to rest the starters some, because playing 40 minutes in Cameron in this game is not like playing 40 minutes against anybody else. Mm-hmm. Moore is exhausted of you because of the emotion. Warm-ups, you've been in warm-ups before, Jacob. You've been there. Warm-ups are crazy. The student place is full an hour and a half before.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild.
The players sweat more in warm-ups now. Like they're drinking their drinks in warm-ups more now, in this game rather than in other games. So if Hubert can steal minutes from the bench and get a little production out of it, they can give them a little bit of juice, that'll be huge.
Yeah. I'm kind of on the same boat as you are. I picked Duke to win just based on what I've seen this season, which I know a lot of Carolina fans and a lot of people, you can't really blame them for that. You know, what we've seen this season against from the Tar Heels against better teams, what we saw earlier this year with the pageantry of the game and how important it is for Coach K and the program. It's a safe bet on my end to pick Duke to win this one, but I'm on the same page as you. I do think Carolina's going to play good. I do think they're going to play a heck of a lot better than they did in Chapel Hill, which I know isn't saying much, but they're going to play a heck of a lot better than they did in that game. And I think Carolina's going to have a chance to win this one late. I think it's going to be a very close game, and we'll see what happens. But, you know, can you imagine Carolina going and winning that game and, you know, stealing the cookies, as Roy Williams liked to say? What was it? What was this exact line? I can't remember it off the top of my head.
Yeah, I want to throw something out there before I
look that one up,
by the way. So let's do something. I've been thinking about this, and we didn't talk about this in advance, but I want to give away a premium membership to THI.
Okay.
All right. So if you're watching this, I'm going to beat Jacob to it. First of all, click like if you like the video, and also hit subscribe so you get notifications when we upload stuff, and we do it all the time. But our Twitter handle is @HeelIllustrated, not Heels Illustrated, @HeelIllustrated. Go ahead and send us a DM. Predict the score of the game. Only if you're predicting Carolina to win. And we're not doing fanboy stuff here, but I want to narrow it down because it's easy for someone to go in there and say, Duke 85, Carolina 65, or whatever. If you really think Carolina is going to win this game, send us what your prediction is, okay? And if you get it right, exactly, I'll give you a 1-year membership to THI for free.
I like that. Go do it, guys. Yeah. Seriously, go do it.
And the reason I'm narrowing it down to Carolina, because not as many people are going to do that, okay? And, you know, more people are going to pick Duke. I don't want to get 7,000 DMs, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't have time for that. Yeah, I figure by saying just pick Carolina, for those people, we might get like 30 or 40.
Yeah, exactly. No, seriously, guys, go do that.
Send us the DM. If we're not following you, I can still have access to opening up the DM. Just go ahead and send it. We'll get to it in the next couple of days. We'll do a cutoff time. How about you got to have your pick in by noon on Saturday?
I like that.
So get your pick in by noon Saturday, only if you're picking Carolina. And if you get the exact score, I'll give you a 1-year membership. But if multiple people get the exact score, I'll pick the person who sent their pick in first.
I love it. See, guys, this is why it's important to listen to the entire podcast instead of, you know, turn it off halfway through. You wait to the end. We give away these little goodies and gems like that. So make sure you guys seriously go do that. A regular subscription is $8.33 a month for those who don't know. So that's a heck of a deal for AJ just to be giving that out as well.
That's $100. It's $100 a year for a subscription. If you just go by the month, it's $10 a month, which is $120. So even if you're not a subscriber, don't go by the month. Get a 1-year deal. And it's $8.33 a month. Honestly, we're cruising toward a gallon of gas price tag.
We're not far off that at
going
this
right
point,
now.
Man. We are not far off it at this point.
It's like a drive-through meal. So
yeah, it's tough out there. But guys, seriously, go do that. Go get your picks in for this game. DM us as well. Make sure, and if you guys need access to our Twitter, it's at Heel Illustrated. You can find us over there. So I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Make sure you guys check out the Rogue Shop as well. Thanks for sponsoring to the Rogue Shop at therogueshop.com. You can check them out. Really high quality products. Can't say enough about how good their stuff is. Make sure you guys like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell as well. We're on the push for 10K. We're going to get there before the basketball season ends. We might need Carolina to win a couple games in March for it to happen, but I'm pretty optimistic we're going to get there.
One more thing, and I didn't interrupt you that time. I actually put my finger up, Jake. I'm improved. See, I'm Caleb Love. I'm in my process.
Hey,
and
man,
I'm getting
it's the
better,
process.
right?
It's the process. Exactly.
We also are going to have a fun little announcement on Monday morning on our site. So just a little teaser there. I think people are going to really enjoy it.
Yeah, make sure you guys stay tuned for that. Really, really cool announcement. I've been led in on a little bit as well. So make sure you guys stay tuned. And I think really cool is a bit of an understatement, but I like AJ keeping it low key right there. So I like that. You got to keep it modest. It's really exciting times. So make sure you guys keep it locked to TarIllustrated.com. Make sure you keep it locked to our YouTube channel as well and help us on that push for 10,000 subscribers. Keep sharing with your friends, guys. We're going to get there before you know it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks.